Parents say no to woke insanity. Yes, that's the focus of tonight's angle. Donald Trump promised to make America great again, but he wasn't just talking about the economy or our health. Public education also needs rescuing. Sex and gender radicals, we know they're working overtime to sideline parents, subvert their authority, and keep them in the dark, if at all possible, about what their kids are learning. But today at the Supreme Court, a case out of the far-left Montgomery County, Maryland, should give us hope that slowly but surely we may be reclaiming the high ground in our schools. First, understand this. Montgomery County, Maryland school board members think that parents have no right, none, to object to their children being exposed to sexually inappropriate, most would say deviant, materials. Second, liberal parents love having their sons and daughters steeped in this filth, but the parents objecting are actually themselves a diverse group.
Hundreds of parents complained, mostly families from Muslim faith and Ethiopian Orthodox, who are objecting when they spoke to the board. The board accused them of using their religious beliefs as another reason to hate, accused a young Muslim girl of parroting her parents' dogma, and then accused the parents of aligning with racist xenophobes and white supremacists.
Okay, this is sick stuff. By the way, do you think those folks came legally from their homeland to come here to have their kids taught like that? I don't think so. That's not what they thought they were getting in America. But the books in this curriculum are for, remember, kindergarten through 5th grade. To give you an idea what 5-year-olds in Montgomery County are learning, look no further than Pride Puppy, about a dog going to the Pride Parade with its family. At the end of the book, there's even a search and find word list. It includes the words intersex, drag queens, lace, and leather. Lovely. Justice Kavanaugh today pressed the Montgomery County attorney about why they simply didn't allow students to opt out.
Every other school board in the country has opt-outs for all sorts of things. The county has opt-outs for all sorts of things. The other Maryland counties have opt-outs for all sorts of things. And yet for this one thing, they changed in mid-year and say no more opt-outs. I'm just not understanding feasibility.
With respect to these books, as they were deployed in the classroom, there was high absenteeism in some schools. For example, dozens of students being opted out.
I love saying the book's deployed, but that's it. Look, they force total compliance, no opt-out, because total indoctrination is their goal.
Montgomery County offers a free public education to parents only if their children use books featuring same-sex relationships and transgender issues. That burdens parents of multiple faiths whose religious duty is to shield their young children from such content.
100% right. But congratulations, Montgomery County. You're now known as the religious bigotry capital of the United States. You're so intolerant, you even lost Justice Kagan.
I, too, was struck by, these are, young kids, picture books, and on matters concerning sexuality. I suspect there are a lot of non-religious parents who weren't all that thrilled about this. And then you add in religion, and that's, even more serious.
Now, to be clear, this case isn't even close. It shouldn't be. The ruling should be 9-0 in favor of the parents. But then again, the Constitution, religious liberty, parental rights, they don't seem to matter as much to certain justices who sound like they're frustrated MSNBC pundits.
The parent can choose to put their kid elsewhere. You don't have to send your kid to public school. I'm struggling to see how it burdens a parent's religious exercise if the school teaches something that the parent disagrees with. You have a choice. You can homeschool them.
Okay, it sounds like Justice Jackson, God bless her, studied a different con law than I did in law school. I'm not sure what she studied. It's unconscionable that a sitting Supreme Court justice would contend that it is constitutionally permissible to penalize Christian or Muslim parents for exercising their religious liberty rights.
Go private. That is the smug response on my local parenting blog to parents who cannot, in good conscience, risk their children being taught lessons about sexuality that violate their most fundamental religious beliefs.
The board has essentially told us that we do not get a final say in our children's education. No notice, no consent, no choice.
These mothers are awesome, by the way. Congratulations for having the guts to speak out. But it gets a lot worse because these leftists are trying to intimidate other parents from resisting their school's sexual propaganda. Because the sense is you oppose them and they're going to somehow maybe even take it out on your kids. Maybe a kid won't get a recommendation to go on to the next school, or they're just going to paint you as cruel, a cruel anti-rainbow hater.
There are kids who go home to rainbow families, showing the beautiful diversity that exists. And we know that a number of our kids are LGBTQ+. And the reality that we're talking about today is people want to erase us from books. They want to erase us from existing. And are we going to let them erase us? No, we are not.
There's not an eraser big enough, okay? These people should not be allowed anywhere near children or education. Not only because they don't respect parents' rights, because they're also really dumb.
People don't live just one lives. They have many identities that intersect. And we must look at this interconnectedness of people's race, gender, sexual orientation, disability, religion, immigration status, and more. When we teach lessons and we share beliefs, we must do so to bring people together and not divide them. Our schools need to be places of joy, safety, and visibility for all.
Oh, visibility. Oh, be an ally. Look, there's nothing safe about learning with these people in charge. American history, Western civilization, the great works, human biology. They want the truth buried and replaced by their warped worldview where children are treated like sexual silly putty to be molded by teachers who can undo the damage done by traditional parents. And by the way, all their platitudes they mouth about diversity, but what they really demand is conformity.
No child should be shielded from the reality of human diversity. To allow students to opt out of learning about people different from themselves is to teach them that ignorance is a virtue. A diverse education is not indoctrination, it is illumination.
Oh my goodness, is that painful? Well, from the sound of things at oral arguments today, and you can never totally predict, but it seems like a majority of justices aren't buying any of this. And when the court's decision is handed down in June, you should expect the usual eruptions from all the usual suspects who somehow landed jobs in schools. And that's the angle.
The prognosis is in.
50% of the people in the world have Trump derangement syndrome. And they still have a really hard time understanding why he's back in the White House. There's nothing you can do about it. He was elected with a majority. Let's get over the derangement syndrome. Let's focus on the policy and get stuff done. Because I've got to tell you, there's a lot of people that go out of their minds.
Mr. Wonderful should have been a doctor because he just accurately diagnosed half the globe as cuckoo. And if you've ever been around someone crazy, you know there's nothing you can do. Crazy's going to crazy. You can't let it affect you. So when I hear Al Gore say he's living under the Third Reich, he must really believe that because he believes he invented the internet.
I understand very well why it is wrong to compare Adolf Hitler's Third Reich to any other movement. It was uniquely evil, full stop. I get it. But there are important lessons from the history of that emergent evil, and here is one that I regard as essential. The Nazis, and I quote again, attacked the very heart of the distinction between true and false. The Trump administration is insisting on trying to create their own preferred version of reality.
Al Gore and the people like him can't accept that Trump won. And the reality is, he's president again, and Gore never was. Trump's living in reality. He's living in the White House. He preferred that version and made it a reality. It's people like Gore who can't accept reality, who can't accept that Trump won. And that's where we are today. These people have convinced themselves that when they're not in power, they're going to die. Or if you don't do what they tell you to do, like buy an electric car, you're going to die. But nobody's dying. They never do. So even though we can't change crazy, we can tell them to chill.
Some in our leadership class seem stricken by self-doubt and even fear of the future. To them, humanity is always one bad decision away from catastrophe. The world will soon end, they tell us, because we're burning too much fuel or making too many things or having too many children. And so, rather than invest in the future, they too often retreat from it. Well, President Trump rejects these failed ideas.
When a crazy guy comes up to you and says something bad's about to happen, you don't take him seriously. You say, "Oh, I'm sorry." You slowly back away. But when half the world is screaming something bad's going to happen, you can't let yourself get worked up. You just have to learn to live with these people. You learn to live with crazy. The stock market was up 1,000 points today, but they keep saying we're on the brink of a recession. Well, the CEO of Chevron, kind of a big deal, says, no, we're not. We're not even close.
You don't think we're headed into a recession in your plans at this point?
You know, there's no signs that we see at this point that we're in or close to a recession.
They said the world was going to side with China, and China was going to eat our lunch. No one wins a trade war, they said. So why are all these countries flying here to do deals with us?
You have the entire trade team meeting with 34 countries this week alone. We are moving at Trump speed to ensure these deals are made on behalf of the American worker and the American people.
34 countries. Well, they say China's the big kahuna. They have 1 billion people. Well, we just found 1 billion more.
We are especially excited to formally announce that America and India have officially finalized the terms of reference for the trade negotiation. I think this is a vital step.
Well, they say we were living in Nazi Germany, so how do you explain all these countries flying here to have lunch and invest? Is India a Nazi collaborator? See what I mean? The Europeans just announced a $50 billion manufacturing investment here. 12,000 jobs made in America. Does that sound like a recession? Is that chaotic? Maybe the process can seem chaotic to some people because it's never been done before, but the results aren't. Trump's the first president in 40 years to cut waste, fraud, and abuse. Democrats are jealous that he's doing things that they ran on and never did. That's what's making him crazy. Their dirty little playbook was to say they were going to do stuff, never do it, and then just keep running on it again and again and again so they can be politicians for life and get rich insider trading and taking half the week off. But Trump's fixing the problems and finding their fraud. So the jig's up. And when they say the world's going to end, yeah, their world's ending. Their reality's over. And they never thought it would happen. So they're having a hard time coming to grips with reality. Clinical psychiatrists call this a psychotic break, when you sever yourself from reality and live in a different world that you've created in your own mind. These are the people we're dealing with. They said we couldn't just shut down the border without Congress, remember? That was a lie. He did it. And we just saw the lowest border crossings in the history of March. They're down 99.9% from Joe. The White House says you can't get much better than that. Trump's proving that the president has more power than they wanted you to know. And they're terrified next time they're in power, voters are going to expect more. Well, Trump did it. Why can't you? Trump closed the border, cut trade deals, lowered gas prices, slashed waste. Why can't you? Voters are going to expect results now. And the crazy people who usually run the show don't want voters expecting results, because that means voters are going to judge them. And politicians, they like to be the judge. Once you flip it on them, it's game over. They're all about debating the process. It's got to be done this way. No, it has to be done this way. Oh, we're going to sue. No, we're going to have a commission. We're going to have legislation. That keeps everybody arguing and distracted and lawyered up. Why do you think they're flying to El Salvador to undeport MS-13? Even though he ended up out of the country, they didn't like the process. The El Salvador 4 are still down there waiting to get margaritas with a gang member. But he's in jail because he's a gang member. So now they're just doing CNN hits from the hotel.
Why did you feel it was important to travel to El Salvador now?
Well, the main thing is that in this country, everybody is entitled to due process.
This is bigger than about just Kilmer Garcia. This is about due process in the United States.
The due process is not a optional. That is a must right in the United States of America.
Donald Trump is following the same authoritarian playbook as others around the world, and by just not following the law.
The El Salvador 4 don't care about due process. They just want to slow down the process. Trump deported these bad hombres so fast that it's making Democrats look feckless. So they want every illegal alien gang member to get a lawyer, a hearing, and a year of appeals at least. And then they want to make Trump look like he's breaking the law. Remember, that's what they tried the last election and it didn't work. What's the definition of insanity? Trying the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. Barack Obama deported 3 million illegals. No one called him a dictator, and no one said citizens are next. Obama's people didn't even think it was controversial.
Will this administration continue to oversee the deportation of 400,000 people a year?
As long as Congress gives us the money to deport 400,000 people a year, that's what the administration is going to do. That's our obligation under the law. We will be strategic about how we do it, and the number of those folks who are either criminals or recent arrivals will continue to go up. But yes, this is our obligation under the law. We must enforce it, and we will do that.
Barack Obama drone-striked an American citizen overseas. What has more due process? Your president murdering you with a missile without a hearing, or your president flying an illegal alien home? These people are crazy. But what happens when you stand next to a crazy person? You look good. You don't even have to do anything except not act crazy. And the funny thing about crazy people is that they don't know they're crazy. So Republicans are offering to pay for any Democrat who wants to go to El Salvador. Just one condition. They have to live stream the whole thing and snap plenty of selfies. It's like handing a crazy person an iPhone. You don't know what's going to happen, but you're going to laugh. And the so-called smart Democrats, you know, the strategists, they're all in. They say, let's all go to El Salvador.
Deep breath, deep breath. Going to try not to scream about all of this, but just...
I'm going to scream about it.
Okay, good.
Right now.
Good.
Yes.
Thank you, because I can't anymore. My head's going to pop off my body.
I'm so pulsing with rage right now over this thing. It's like, if we are not willing to stand up here, then I don't know what we are fighting for or what we stand for or who we are.
This never happened when Nancy was in charge. She wouldn't let her members fly to foreign countries for photo ops with MS-13. The guy has MS-13 tatted on his knuckles. Even Nancy knows better than that. She had everybody disciplined. And if you got out of the line, she'd cut your throat. Now Hakeem's running the show, and he's afraid of his own base. So the base is out of control. AOC's beefing with Fetterman, Dave Hogg scrapping with Carville. Colleagues are trying to coup Schumer. If Al Green had shaken that cane at Trump and Nancy was there, she would have grabbed it and broke his kneecaps. She'd never tolerate Jasmine Crockett and her little shenanigans. Pelosi was the psych warden, kept all these kooks in line. And unlike the first term, Trump's not even bothering with these people. He's focused on the big stuff like peace, trade, and borders, and letting the results speak for themselves. Click here to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page to catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You won't get it anywhere else.
But we begin with Chuck Schumer praising Donald Trump. Take a look.
I was born in Brooklyn, the same place where Donald Trump's family comes from. His father and my grandfather were builders together in Brooklyn. Really? Yeah. Even when he was much younger, you knew that he was going to go places, so it's no...
Senator Schumer and Mr. Trump are good friends. They both have a passion for life, and you get that immediately talking to him.
Obviously, a few years ago before Trump was president, but he was kind of right. Now Schumer has nothing nice to say. He's already at his lowest popularity rate in New York State, according to the just-released Siena poll out today. AOC, by the way, on the rise big time. So the question tonight is, are Chuck's days numbered? But if there is one constant in the Democratic Party, it's that they don't really, truly believe in anything. Everything they say, everything they do is about their own political power. Let me give you an example. In 2017, Maryland Senator Chris Van Hollen bashed Trump on Twitter. Why? Saying, quote, we should be focused on deporting MS-13, not scholarship winners. That's the same guy that last week, went to visit the deported suspected MS-13 gang member to bring him back to this country. Chris Van Hollen threw a fit, even got on that plane to El Salvador, demanding his immediate return. That would be political grandstanding at its worst. And this is the same Chris Van Hollen, couldn't even pick up a telephone and speak with the families of young women who were raped and murdered in his state by unvetted illegal immigrants. And just yesterday, another illegal immigrant was charged with the murder of a 23-year-old woman whose body was found in a Maryland forest. Will he pick up the phone now? But we have yet to see any kind of hysteria from Maryland Senator Chris Van Hollen. I'm sure he's just very worn out. He's probably very tired from his big trip to El Salvador. But the hypocrisy doesn't end there. Let's go to Earth Day. Of course, Al Gore forcing his way back into the spotlight. This time he is honoring our planet by comparing Donald Trump to Adolf Hitler. Take a look.
I understand very well why it is wrong to compare Adolf Hitler's Third Reich to any other movement. It was uniquely evil, full stop. I get it. But there are important lessons from the history of that emergent evil. But it was Habermas's mentor, Theodor Adorno, who wrote that the first step in that nation's descent into hell was, and I quote, the conversion of all questions of truth into questions of power. He described how the Nazis, and I quote again, attacked the very heart of the distinction between true and false, end quote. The Trump administration is insisting on trying to create their own preferred version of reality.
Oh, of course. Now, I shouldn't compare people to Hitler, but I'll do it anyway. Now, just like most of his other colleagues in the Democratic Party, Al Gore is a complete fraud and hypocrite. He's like the original climate hysteria hypocrite of all time. Everything he says is a ploy to get money and power. So tonight, time for a quick Hannity history lesson. I promise you're not going to hear it anywhere else in the media. Let's go back to 2007. That same guy, Al Gore, warned of a planetary emergency. He said the planet has a fever and that humanity could soon be in peril. That, of course, was false. In 2009, Gore said that 75% of the entire polar ice cap will melt in the next 5 to 7 years. That was also totally false. By 2015, the ice caps even expanded in many areas. He also warned about the extinction of the coral reefs. Oops. But in 2019, the reefs grew by 2%. This came after decades of dire, varying claims about climate change, climate cooling, climate warming. Then, if it snows, you have an excuse. If it doesn't snow, if there's an earthquake, if there's not an earthquake, if there's a hurricane, if there's not a hurricane, always have an excuse for something. This came after years of wild claims about climate change. Let's take you back to 1975. Look at that. That's Newsweek. They predicted a cooling world with an ice age by the mid-1980s. Obviously, they were wrong. In 1995, the New York Times reported that beaches on the east coast of the U.S. would be wiped out by 2021. 4 years ago, in 2006, Time magazine claimed that the Earth was at a tipping point and that we all should be very, very worried. But here's the thing. Democrats, they never actually believe that. Al Gore, of all people, look at this. This was a Hannity exclusive video, filmed jetting all over the country in a private jet. That jet seats about 14, 16 people. There's only 2 people on it and the pilots. So the same thing with Biden's climate czar, John Kerry, I need important work and I need to get there quickly. That's why I get to take a private jet, and I want you to get rid of your SUV. Look at your screen. Just this week, I love this. AOC, Bernie Sanders. Look at them right there. That's a nice plane they're getting out of there. Look at that. They were filmed stepping off their private jet. I'm not against private jets, but don't lecture everybody about their SUVs or their caravans, for crying out loud. And remember, in 2019, it was AOC claiming that the world was going to end in 12 years. Why? Because of rising CO2 levels. But now she's riding around, leaving a huge carbon footprint with a private jet for her and her mentor, Bernie Sanders. And meanwhile, environmental activists in New York, they painted Wall Street's iconic bull to show their dedication to the climate cult and socialism. But then frantically, they cleaned up their mess when the cops arrived on the scene. They don't actually care enough about their cause to go to jail. Now, of course, if you're in Minnesota and you damage private property, no consequences in Tim Walz's state, so long as your cause aligns with the radical left Democratic extremists. For example, a far-left Minnesota state employee was just gifted a get-out-of-jail-free card by a woke district attorney after allegedly causing more than $20,000 in damage to several Tesla vehicles. Sounds like domestic terrorism to me, but what would I know? Make no mistake, at the end of the day, this has nothing to do with the earth cooling, global warming, which has evolved into the generic climate change. So if it gets warm, they have a name for it. If it gets cold, they have a name for it. If it snows, they've got a name for it. If it doesn't snow, they have a name for it. Look at this list. It's the Green New Deal. Look, everything on this list has nothing to do really with climate. Climate warming, climate cooling, climate changing is the left's mechanism for Marxism, statism, as represented by that list. To each, according to their need, from each, according to their ability. The only thing Democrats really care about actually is political power and you being dependent on them. And this is the result. Look at this heartbreaking video. This is a little girl in San Francisco attempting to ride her scooter down a sidewalk that's lined with strung-out drug addicts. Great job, Gavin. Now Democrats want to control every aspect of your life on top of what they already control. You know, they've done so well giving you nearly $40 trillion in debt, the worst schools in spite of spending more money in the entire industrialized world. They brought Social Security and Medicaid to the brink of bankruptcy. And by the way, how's law and order and safety and security working out in your town, in your city, since the defund, dismantled, no bail laws were implemented by the left? Now even leftist Governor Newsom, he's now trying, good luck, Gavin, to distance himself from the very decisions that created this horrible scene. But just this week, his parole board, they ordered the release of a man who was convicted of beating a toddler to death, a 2-year-old toddler to death, after spending just 15 years in prison. And by the way, Newsom should know that his party's base, they don't take too kindly to self-reflection. Just look at what happened to Rambo Deadfish Emanuel when he dared to lightly criticize the Democratic Party's radical agenda. Take a look.
We were really south on kitchen table issues. We weren't really good about the family room issues.
I disagree with you. I disagree with you 100%.
Okay, the only room we were did really well was the bathroom, and that's the smallest room in the house.
That is such that is total. That is buying into the right-wing media narrative, and I'm so sick of Democrats like you selling out and saying this.
Oh, Rahm is not leftist enough. He's pretty left. Democrats are in big trouble. Why? Because their radical ideology, it has failed miserably. Even some in Hollywood can see the handwritings on the wall. Take a look.
This is where I would push back. When I see this kind of insight and passion being directed at the current administration and the lack of this kind of insight and passion being directed at the previous administration, where, again, I'm not talking about you, I'm talking about left-leaning news media organizations were kind of like, la, 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 everything's fine. Look, the environment's, look, the economy's great, la, 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 immigration's not that much of a problem. And really being Cleopatra, queen of denial. Thank you. Boom.
So you know the Democrats have gone too far when they get a wake-up call from San Francisco? Yeah, yesterday, local Dems there called on the National Party to move towards the center, claiming there's a reckoning to be had in the party. And they aim to save it by rejecting what they deride as performative politics and virtue signaling and embracing quality of life issues. Now, I know what you're thinking. San Francisco? The hotbed of progressivism, long mired by rampant homelessness, drug use, crime, and Jefferson Starship? The same deep blue city that became the breeding ground for such brilliant political minds like Nancy Pelosi, Kamala Harris, Gavin Newsom, and the Unabomber. We're talking about the same San Francisco, right? Well, let this be a warning for Dems. If SF is telling you that you have a problem, you better listen. It's like if Kamala told you, hey, maybe you don't need another shot of Jameson. Or Jay Pritzker saying, hey, go easy on the nacho cheese. Or Trey Gowdy telling you, yeah, you need a new barber. Look at him. He is a cartoon. Now, if the left truly wants to move to the center, they don't need a lecture from a city whose sidewalks are as full of as Jimmy Kimmel after a rubber cement enema. First, they got to drop the identity politics. It's an issue that feeds the false dead-end sense of oppression. Dems cater to victimhood and talk around the edges on every issue, while Donald Trump gets to the heart of them. He told the truth. The border's wide open, inflation's at a record high, Rosie O'Donnell has a mild gravitational pull. Meanwhile, the left remained a hollowed-out party, nurturing the identity politics cult until it ate them from within. Then, Dems now need to stop supporting the bad guys. Not everyone is a lionized victim that will magically move the masses in opposition to Trump. People relate to Robin Hood because he fought corrupt politicians and high taxes, not because he looted Nike. Take the Maryland dad, which is the equivalent of calling bin Laden a Saudi influencer. Yesterday, 4 more Dems landed in El Salvador to greet their favorite gangbanger. I haven't seen so many Democrats excited to travel since Epstein Island. Count it! I'm surprised they didn't discover his gang tattoos themselves while they kissed his ass. But he's just the latest in the Dems' long list of false martyrs. Take Luigi, who the left elevated to folk hero status, or Mahmoud Khalil, the anti-West hobgoblin, who the left treats like Gandhi in a paraglider. Not to mention Michael Brown, Smollett, George Floyd. If Jeffrey Dahmer were alive today, the left would call him an environmentalist for reducing the carbon footprint. Lastly, if the Dems truly want to fix things, they got to drop the act. Because Dems are desperately attempting a rebrand, and like Jesse's hair, it's fake. They're calling it dark woke. It's an attitude the New York Times calls provocative and edgy, and it's why you have most Dems cursing like they just discovered the 2 Live crew. They see this as a way to win back voters and connect with Trump's bluntness. But if you have to act edgy, you're not. Being provocative works for Trump because that's who he is. Well, that and you created a world so PC, we desperately needed him. So you can't be woke and provocative. That's like being a marathon runner and interesting. But this dark woke BS reveals once again that Dems are as lost as Biden coming back from a bowling alley's men's room. They still want trans kids. They still want open borders. They still want to burn down police stations. Just now they've added swearing. Because they're out of ideas. And why? Well, look under the hood. What's the engine for their idea creation? It's identity politics, which both prevents you from thinking beyond your already doomed but shared assumptions, but acts as a barrier against thinking of new ideas and escaping that prison. This is why a new idea can't get out of bed. It's strapped to the gurney with a cast of The View sitting on its chest. It's kind of like a drug addiction, one that demands all of you. So what if you lost your job and your wife? All you need is me, and if you ever leave me, you will die. That's identity politics. It shrinks your world to a small, confined space, convincing you that the beautiful world outside is the threat. So for the Dems, this isn't a difficult challenge. It's a shift in thinking, where you look at every failed idea you had and see what they have in common. For a drunk, it's always that first drink. For a Democrat, it's fear, a fear that their entire mindset is wrong. It's hard to let go of that, but just try it for one day and see what happens. Let's welcome His crowd work is asking audience, why are you leaving? Writer and comedian Joe Devito. He likes to perform prostate exams after hours. Chief Patient Officer at the wellness company, Dr. Drew Pinsky. She's got a black belt and makes audiences melt. Financial analyst Heather Zumalaga. And in high school, he was most second. In high school, voted most likely to knock up your aunt. New York Times
That you, Joe? That's you, Joe. Yeah, that's you. Yeah.
I added that bad part. So, Joe, what do you make of the dark woke?
More like dork woke.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Wow, that was...
They already tried this with the dark Brandon when
Yes.
they had Joe Biden with mood lighting, which didn't work. Because
Yes.
You can't have a light near him because he'll walk toward it.
Yes.
I do laugh at the idea that San Francisco moderates. What is the San Francisco moderate? Is that a drag queen who puts the toilet seat back down when they leave the ladies' room? Is that... I think the problem is the Democrats, they keep picking the worst people to be their heroes. I mean, they literally picked a gang member whose first name starts with the word kill.
Yes.
That's not good. So yeah, it's crazy, and he's not even MS-30. He's like MS-18.
Yes.
So that's who they picked, and now you see them all heading down to El Salvador. But why him? Because we still have American citizens who are held hostage in Gaza. I don't see them booking that flight. Yeah. So that shows you. And it's not. They keep saying we need to rebrand. It's not rebranding. You need to keep rebranding. Your product sucks. Okay, you can't keep saying flaming bag of now in designer colors. It's like no. It's a deeper problem.
It's a good point about MS-13. I'm going to wait till they're MS-21 before I ask them out. Go ahead, Drew.
I want to talk about dark woke because I want to do a public service here. I want to inoculate the public and the audience without a syringe. I'm going to inoculate you against propaganda. Here are two words that are propagandistic. Every time you hear them, assume propaganda. Chaos.
Yes.
Friend Scott Adam points that out. And dark. Those are thoughtful propaganda. Do not fall for it. And whenever you hear people saying you are an oligarch, for instance, it's coming from an oligarchy.
Yes.
What you should hear instead of you are is I am. It's always the way narcissists work. The system has always been like that. They are accusing and projecting of exactly what they're doing every time.
Yeah.
It's been through the last 8 years, and here we are again. And last thing about San Francisco, yes, you're right. If they're calling you are in big trouble. But what they're saying is you need to consider becoming a Republican. Think of what the headline was.
Right.
And they say that kind of stuff in California, and they go, no, we didn't really mean it.
Yeah.
And they don't do anything.
Yeah, how soon will they have to put out a retraction? Heather, how are you? You seem like you're dozing over there.
Dr. Drew saw me in the lobby at the hotel, and I was like, oh, my God, please, I hope he didn't see. I had no hair, no makeup, no hair.
You can't get over it.
And I was like, maybe he didn't see me. And he goes, hey, I know you. We're doing a show together tonight. I was like, oh, no, my God.
And she said, well, I have my juice.
Wow. And you said, just leave it on the counter, and we'll call you in 3 days and let you know if you got anything. I always hated that. When you had to walk out with the little container and it's warm and you feel like you got to put it on the counter. Heather, this is what happens when you take me off course. The thing about this dark woke stuff is it's not organic. It is like the opposite of organic, I'm finding, is propaganda.
Yep.
Right. Well, I do like, they're calling it new pragmatism. Is that the name? I do like that they're trying to move more to the middle or the center. They've realized, to Joe's point, that the brand and the messaging is not working. And so I don't know if you mentioned this. I should listen better. The YouGov poll says AOC has 61% approval rating for Democrats, right? The highest of any Democrat unless they've been elected president. So if your new brand ambassador is going to be AOC, then I think it's more than just the messaging and the branding. You also need a new brand ambassador.
All right, Tyrus. You mentioned this a long time ago, and it always stuck with me, that they are always dancing around the edges. They don't do the heavy lifting.
No.
And I think the San Francisco is saying it's time to do the heavy lifting.
Well, let's stop giving them so much credit, Greg. Just because one person decided to say, I'm going to write this, it doesn't mean the entire party's changed. And that's the problem. They're a party of activists. So until they get the activists out, there's always going to be this ridiculousness, this dark woke. As a dark person, keep that to yourself. Why don't you go with white woke, or take one of the many colors you stole from the rainbow and make it purple woke, orange woke. Why you got to put that on off?
Yeah, you know what it is? It's racist. Because they're assuming that something dark is kind of dangerous.
Tough, yeah, dangerous. Like they're Darth woke,
Yeah.
But the thing is the reason why they can't get it, they can't change, and they won't change is because they have no respect for the American people. You guys keep asking, why do they pick the George Floyds? Why do they pick MSN 13 home dad? Because that's what they think of the American people. They think, hey, this is what the average American is like as far as we can tell. So when we take one of their champions, which is always a thug, a person with horrible character, they're going to rally around us because we're trying to help them because they don't read good. And they all want to play in the NBA. And they, but that's why you pick people like that, because that's who you think represents the dummies who vote for you. So as long as that's where they're at, but again, whose fault is that? You dumb vote for these idiots. Like that's. Appreciate that the Republican Party was completely dismantled. The old oligarchy with like Romney and Bush and Cheney. It's a different organization, and they're not willing to do that with the Democratic Party.
You know what? Republicans went through their catharsis, and now it's the Democrats, and they'll probably get through it. But I'll just have to wait and see. That's what a host says. We'll just wait. We'll have to leave it there.
Nice.
Very CNN.
Barry,
yeah. A woke DA saves a vandal.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.